There's a lot of information out there about budgeting and saving money, but you rarely hear about the hidden costs of ignoring what your body is trying to tell you. So, in this video, I want to cover 3 areas in which this can show up. The 3 areas are going to be with self care, health care, and with your job. So, let's hop right into it. So, as far as self care, when you're dealing with something like burnout, particularly, feeling exhausted all the time, just feeling like you need a break, feeling overwhelmed, stressed out, you know, um, this can come in many different forms when you start trying to create coping mechanisms for it. So the not so obvious is going to be like, okay, taking vacations, right? You might start planning a lot of trips. You might start taking a lot of trips, vacations. You might take long extended vacations if you can with your job, or you might just be taking a lot of trips throughout the year because you always feel like you just need to get away. You need a break, right? That's a cost, and that adds up. Taking vacations already in general is expensive, both domestically and if you take an international trip, especially when you take international trips. So that's a hidden cost that we don't really think about, connecting it to the deeper issue on why are we feeling this way? Why do we feel like we always got to constantly get away? Another way this shows up in self care is retail therapy. Some of us, like to shop online, you know what I mean? And you're constantly just looking up things, buying nice things that you don't necessarily need. You may be able to afford it, but you don't necessarily need these things because you're just trying to look for something to give you a spark of happiness, a spark of joy. If you're always just kind of feeling negative, sad, possibly depressed. And so you're just looking for ways to just like have a moment of excitement. And, maybe online shopping is a thing that do it for you, but that's something that adds up. Another way this can show up as far as self-care, some of you, some of us are a little bougie. We like to do like a spa day, take care of ourselves, or you might even have just like a massage therapist or something. You'd like to go, consistently to get massages. That adds up. Those are costs that adds up. And again, we're not really looking at the reason why. It could be a one-off thing, something that you try. But if it seems like something that you depend on, you know what I mean, to kind of get through, to get through the week, to get through the month, then it might be a sign that you might need to start kind of paying attention to, okay, well, why do I feel this way all the time? Why do I need to be going to the spa all the time or getting massages all the time? It's beautiful to be able to do these things for yourself as a treat here and there, but when it becomes like a routine, like it has to become a part of your, routine, then it might be a deeper issue there. Another way this can show up is like spending for convenience. I myself am totally, guilty of that. Not even just being a single, but just literally being exhausted like all the time. So like food apps, you know what I mean? Door dashing it up, ordering food because you're just too tired to cook, Also just with like other shopping conveniences like, you know, Amazon, ordering things that you could probably just run to the store and get, Walmart, those types of things, just having those types of things delivered, it's costing you, money to be able to do these things with memberships and things of that nature. And these things, add up, even to the point where like, okay, say you're not door dashing it up, but you might even look into like getting like meal prep services where the meals come pre-made or whatever, where you have to subscribe to those types of things. That's a hidden cost, and that stuff adds up. And not to mention, it's not cheap either. You might go down a subscription spiral where you just start subscribing to a bunch of different, streaming apps, or, just because you're constantly looking for something, what I mean, to take your mind off of things, to just give yourself a break. And those are just sort of things that add up. So those are just a few examples of how hidden costs in self-care can be a sign that you might need to step back and think about and try to pinpoint why is it that I'm feeling this way? Why am I constantly, turning to these different things to make myself feel better? The second area that I wanted to cover is healthcare. This one is a bit more obvious, but can still like lurk up on you. So especially with dealing with something like burnout, maybe you pay to see a therapist, regularly, and you may have health insurance for all of these different things, but those copays they don't play around with them copays. A lot of times copays are like super expensive. And so you might be seeing a therapist, or you might just for regular doctor visits, because maybe you starting to have a lot of aches and pains out of the blue for no apparent reason. Maybe you're constantly getting sick, maybe with a cold or flu or something. Like you seem like you stay sick all the time. You can't, it's not necessarily the season for it either. You're experiencing just decline in physical health. So you're constantly either going to a doctor or hopping up to your nearest pharmacy to, get over-the-counter meds. Like these types of things, add up. And again, if there's not a obvious, like, serious health condition related to, these things, it might, have something to do with stress, maybe from your job or just, your everyday life, or both. A lot of this stuff, though, when I refer to it, is most likely having to do with your job and the work that you do. You might just be extra stressed out. And that's the point of view that I'm coming from with that. So all of these things can be hidden costs that, again, sure, you might, of course, normally you might have things here and there where you need to go, see a healthcare provider about. But if it seems like a lot of this stuff is just out of the blue, and there's no real logical, real explanation for it, it might be due to stress. And these are some of those things that, come into play when, trying to listen to your body and figure out, like, dang, why am I, all of a sudden, dealing with these types of issues? Because there's a lot of hidden costs that go into taking care of yourself when you're in situations that don't really align with what you should be doing, or what you would, want to do in your life. And the third area that I wanted to touch on was, with your job, your career, particularly with losing out on a paycheck, losing out on wages, because, like, you might get to a point where you might be so stressed out or overwhelmed or just not feeling it. And I don't want to say you're necessarily making a rash or emotional decision, but you may find yourself quitting your job maybe with or without a plan. Ideally, hopefully with the plan, but you might be quitting your job, without another job lined up, and it may take time for you to get another job, especially in, nowadays. It's just really hard for, to get, find employment. So, like, whether you quit with a plan or without a plan, let's say you go ahead and quit without a plan. Well, dang, okay, now the money stopped coming in. So now you losing out on money because you just reached a boiling point, and you know what I mean? And you just like, I can't take it, whatever. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And you quit. You losing out on money. That adds up, especially if you had a really decent paying job, maybe a high earning job. But let's say you do quit. Let's say you do quit and you do have a plan. Let's say you have a little nest egg, some money saved up. I like to call this a FU fund, right? It's a popular term among the financial independence community. But let's say you have your FU fund saved up. That can be anywhere from a couple of months to a year. Think about how much money that is, you know, needed to be set aside, that you could be using to invest in, invest with, or, put towards retirement, etc. But you have to set it aside just in case, you reach that point where you can't take it with your job anymore and you need to quit. That's money, rather it being wasted. It's not being wasted because it's there, for a specific purpose. But let's say you do have that money saved up and you don't really have another job lined up. Now you digging into that money to just, to live on, and till hopefully you can, find another job, and who knows how long that might take, So again, these are just some of the things that I have personal experience with dealing with, especially when it comes to dealing with something like burnout. For me, the biggest things were spending for convenience, for sure, taking vacations, most definitely like expensive vacations too, because that it just adds up, because it's not just the cost of the plane ticket. It's the plane ticket, the hotel, the entertainment, the food, all of that stuff, adds up. And ultimately you can end up spending a ton of money just to get away for a week, if you're lucky, 2 weeks or more. And the messed up part about it is, you might feel good while you're away. You're like loving it and you're in bliss. But guess what? You have to come right back to the environment that sent you on the vacation in the beginning. That made you feel it necessary to have to take a vacation to begin with. So you could find yourself right back at square one. Now you're feeling, all stressed out and, burnt out all over again. And instead of trying to tackle the root cause of it, you might just perpetually just continue to just have to take time off, take time away, and these are those things that, again, when we're not paying attention to our bodies, can have massive costs associated with taking care of the symptoms. You know what I mean? And it's really important that we do take a step back and try to identify a lot of these things early so that we can plan and prepare for it later, so that it doesn't have such a higher impact on our finances. So I just wanted to touch on those topics in this video today. If this is the sort of content that you would be interested in seeing more of, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so that you can be notified when I post new videos. And until then, I will see you in the next video.